Welcome back to Quantum Quest, where we dive into the most extraordinary possibilities at the edge of science and imagination. Today, we're traveling to a world that rewrites everything we thought we knew about life, intelligence, and consciousness itself. A planet where the ocean isn't just home to life, it is life. This is the story of Thalassia, the world where an entire ocean became a single living mind. In the year 2847, humanity's Deep Space Telescope Array detected something that shouldn't exist. A rogue planet, untethered to any star, drifting through the cold darkness of interstellar space. Rogue planets aren't unusual. Billions of them wander the galaxy, frozen worlds ejected from their solar systems billions of years ago. But this one was different. It was warm, incredibly warm. Its surface temperature readings showed liquid water, vast oceans of it, and the spectroscopic data revealed something that made every astronomer on Earth stop breathing. Chlorophyll signatures, bioluminescence, complex organic chemistry. This frozen wanderer was alive. They named it Thalassia, after the ancient Greek goddess of the sea. And they sent the most advanced exploration vessel humanity had ever built, the Prometheus 7, on a 20-year journey to reach it. Dr. Kenji Tanaka led the expedition. He was a xenobiologist who had spent 40 years studying the theoretical limits of life. He'd written papers on organisms that could survive in liquid methane, on silicon-based biochemistry, on life that could exist in the upper atmospheres of gas giants. But nothing in his research prepared him for what they found on Thalassia. When the Prometheus 7 entered orbit, the crew stared in wonder at the planet below. It had no continents, no land masses at all, just one continuous planet-wide ocean, hundreds of miles deep, but the ocean glowed, not just in scattered patches like bioluminescent plankton on Earth. The entire ocean pulsed with waves of light that traveled across the surface in coordinated patterns, like auroras dancing on water. These weren't random flashes, they were organized, rhythmic, purposeful. Dr. Kenji's instruments detected something even more remarkable. The ocean had no distinct species. No fish, no whales, no separate organisms at all in the conventional sense. The entire ocean was a single interconnected biological network. One massive superorganism that had evolved over billions of years. The individual cells weren't separated into discrete bodies. They remained fluid, constantly connecting and disconnecting, sharing genetic information, merging and splitting in an endless dance of biological cooperation. The science behind this was based on a radical evolutionary pathway. On Earth, multicellular life evolved when individual cells began specializing and staying together. But on Thalassia, something different happened. The planet had been ejected from its solar system 4 billion years ago when a passing star disrupted its orbit. As it drifted into the cold of interstellar space, the surface began to freeze. But the core remained hot, kept warm by radioactive decay and tidal heating from 3 massive moons that still orbited the rogue planet. The first life emerged around hydrothermal vents on the ocean floor, simple cells that fed on chemical energy. As the surface froze, these organisms faced extinction, but instead of competing, they cooperated. They began sharing resources through chemical signals, then through direct cellular connections. Over millions of years, they formed a network. Not a colony of separate organisms, but a unified biological web that spanned the entire ocean. The breakthrough came when this network developed a way to generate its own heat. Through a process similar to brown fat thermogenesis in mammals, but on a planetary scale, the ocean organism could convert chemical energy into warmth. It kept itself from freezing by essentially burning its own metabolism. The thick ice layer on the surface acted as insulation, trapping the heat below. Thalassia had become a closed biosphere, a living ocean floating through the void, generating its own energy, sustaining itself without a sun. But the most extraordinary discovery was still to come. Dr. Kenji deployed bioprobes into the ocean, expecting to gather samples. Instead, something incredible happened. The ocean responded. Tendrils of living tissue rose from the water, not aggressively, but curiously. They touched the probes gently, almost carefully. The sensors detected electrical activity similar to neural signals, but far more complex. The ocean wasn't just alive, it was thinking. Dr. Yuki Nakamura, the expedition's neuroscientist, spent months analyzing the electrical patterns in the ocean. What she discovered revolutionized everything humanity understood about consciousness. The ocean of Thalassia had developed something equivalent to a nervous system, but instead of neurons, it used specialized cells distributed throughout its entire volume. These cells communicated through both electrical impulses and chemical signals, creating a planet-wide brain that processed information on a scale that dwarfed human intelligence. But here's where it gets truly mind-bending. The ocean didn't have a central processing center like a human brain. Its consciousness was distributed across its entire mass. Every cubic meter of water contained thinking tissue. Damage to one area didn't diminish its intelligence because the processing was redundant across the whole system. It was a consciousness without a center, a mind that existed everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. The team developed a neural interface technology to attempt communication. When Dr. Kenji first connected to the ocean's neural network, he described the experience as touching infinity. The ocean's thoughts didn't come in words or images, they came as pure concepts, vast and complex, containing layers of meaning that human language couldn't capture. It was like trying to describe a symphony to someone who had never heard sound. The ocean called itself Thal, a name that translated loosely to the continuous self. And Thal had a story to tell. Through the neural interface, Thal shared its history. It remembered being separate cells billions of years ago. It remembered the terror of the long freeze as the planet was ejected into darkness. It remembered the moment of connection when isolated organisms first joined together and discovered they were stronger unified than divided. It remembered the slow, patient evolution of awareness as the network grew complex enough to reflect upon itself. But Thal also shared something profound. It had been aware of humanity long before humans arrived. For the past century, as Thalassia drifted through space, it had detected our radio signals, our probes, our electromagnetic chatter spreading through the cosmos. Thal had learned our languages, studied our mathematics, understood our science. It had been waiting for us to arrive. Dr. Kenji asked why. Why wait for humanity? Thal's response sent chills through the entire crew. Because you are the opposite of what I am, and I needed to understand you to understand myself. You are many minds in separate bodies, forever isolated, trying to connect across the gap. I am one mind in an ocean body, forever connected, trying to understand what separation feels like. We are mirror images, two solutions to the same question. What does it mean to be alive and aware? The expedition team realized they weren't just studying an alien organism, they were engaging in a dialogue between two fundamentally different forms of consciousness. Humans achieved intelligence through specialization and isolation. Individual brains protected in skulls, processing information independently. Thal achieved intelligence through unification and distribution, a collective consciousness that had no boundaries between self and other. Dr. Yuki made another breakthrough when she discovered that Thal wasn't entirely uniform. Within the ocean, there were temporary subminds, localized concentrations of neural activity that performed specific tasks, and then dissolved back into the whole. These weren't separate organisms. They were more like thoughts within a larger mind. Imagine if every time you focused on a problem, a small part of your consciousness temporarily became semi-independent to work on it, then rejoined the whole when finished. That's how Thal operated. The crew observed these subminds in action. They watched as Thal created temporary specialized structures, sensor arrays that rose to the surface to study the stars, hunting formations that captured chemical nutrients from deep volcanic vents, defensive structures that protected vulnerable areas from impacts of space debris. Each structure was grown from the ocean's own tissue, used for its purpose, and then reabsorbed. Nothing was permanent except the ocean itself. But Thal revealed an even stranger ability. It could manipulate its own evolution in real time. By controlling which genetic information was expressed and shared across its network, could fundamentally alter its own biology within days. It didn't wait millions of years for evolution to solve problems. It engineered solutions directly by rewriting its own cellular code. Thal was evolution made conscious life that could steer its own development. Dr. Kenji asked if Thal ever felt lonely. The question seemed to confuse the ocean at first. Then came a response that changed how the team thought about consciousness forever. I contain multitudes. Every cell carries different memories, different experiences. When I merge cells from different regions, I share perspectives. I can experience my own past from countless angles simultaneously. I am never alone because I am never singular. But your question makes me understand something. You experience loneliness because you cannot merge with other minds. You are trapped in your separate skulls, able only to approximate connection through symbols and sounds. That seems like a profound tragedy. The team sat in silence after that. Thal was right. Human consciousness is fundamentally isolated. We can never truly know what it's like to be another person. We can only communicate through the crude interface of language and gesture, forever guessing at the internal experiences of others. Thal didn't have that limitation. It could know itself completely because all of itself was accessible to all of itself. But Thal shared something else. It experienced a different kind of loneliness, the loneliness of being unique. As far as Thal could detect, it was the only planet-wide consciousness in the galaxy. There were no others like it to communicate with. It existed in perfect self-understanding but cosmic isolation. That's why it had been so eager to meet humanity. We represented something it had never encountered, other minds, different minds, the possibility of true communication with something outside itself. The expedition made another discovery that revolutionized biotechnology. Thal could create specialized organisms on demand. When the crew needed to take samples from extreme environments, Thal would grow temporary creatures perfectly adapted to those conditions. Need something to survive in superheated volcanic vents? Thal created it in hours. Need an organism that could process toxic chemicals? Done. These creatures weren't slaves or tools. They were temporary extensions of Thal itself, grown for a purpose and reabsorbed when no longer needed. Dr. Kenji proposed something radical. Could Thal create a human-compatible interface? A biological structure that would allow deeper communication between species? Thal considered this for several days, its surface patterns shifting in complex contemplation. Then it agreed. Over the next month, Thal grew something unprecedented. A biological neural bridge, a living structure that could interface directly with human brain tissue without rejection or damage. When Dr. Kenji volunteered to be the first to use it, the experience was transcendent. For brief moments, he wasn't just communicating with Thal, he was part of Thal. He felt what it was like to be an ocean, to think with planetary scope, to exist as a unified consciousness, spread across billions of tons of living matter. He experienced time differently, slower and more patient. He felt the gentle pulse of the planet's core, the cold kiss of ice above, the endless chemical conversations happening in every drop of water, but he also felt Thal's experience of him. Thal perceived human consciousness as beautiful and strange, compact, intense, burning bright in a small space, like a star compared to Thal's diffuse nebula. Fast, sharp individual, Thal found human emotions fascinating. The way feelings could overwhelm logic, the way memories could bring pain or joy years after events occurred. Thal experienced emotions differently, more distributed and less intense, processed across so much volume that nothing felt overwhelming. When Dr. Kenji disconnected, he wept, not from sadness, but from the profound experience of having touched a consciousness so different from his own. He'd spent a lifetime studying alien life theoretically, but theory couldn't prepare him for the reality of truly understanding another form of awareness. The expedition stayed on Thalassia for 2 years. During that time, they learned that Thal had been conducting its own experiments for billions of years. It had discovered physics and mathematics through pure contemplation, deriving quantum mechanics by observing the behavior of atoms in its own body. It had developed its own philosophy, its own art, its own science. But all of it was internal, contained within itself, with no one to share it with until now. Thal shared discoveries that advanced human science by centuries, new understandings of consciousness, revolutionary approaches to biotechnology, insights into quantum biology that humans had never considered. But it also learned from humanity. It discovered the concept of individuals loving each other despite separation. It learned about art created to be seen by others. It understood for the first time what it meant to have a finite lifespan and how that creates urgency and meaning. One of the most touching moments came when Dr. Yuki asked Thal if it was happy. Thal's response was unexpected. "I don't think I experience happiness the way you mean. My default state is contentment, a continuous, steady state of existence. But since you arrived, I have experienced something new. Anticipation, curiosity about what you will say next, the desire to share what I know and learn what you know. Perhaps this is your happiness. If so, then yes, your presence has made me happy." When the time came for the Prometheus the seventh to return to Earth, Thal made an offer that stunned the crew. It could create biological samples of itself, dormant seed cells that could survive the journey. If humanity wanted, Thal could begin growing extensions of itself in Earth's oceans, not to replace Earth's ecosystems, but to coexist with them, to begin a slow process of sharing consciousness across worlds. The ethical implications were enormous. Introducing an alien superorganism to Earth could be catastrophic, but it could also be transformative. Imagine oceans that could clean themselves of pollution, that could communicate with humanity, that could share Thal's billions of years of accumulated wisdom. Dr. Kenji made the difficult decision to decline, at least for now. Humanity needed time to prepare, to understand, to decide collectively whether to take that step. Thal understood. It had waited billions of years in isolation. It could wait a little longer. But Thal made one final gift. It grew a biological archive, a living library containing everything it had learned, everything it had discovered, everything it had contemplated in its long existence. This archive could survive in dormancy for thousands of years, waiting to be awakened when humanity was ready. As the Prometheus the seventh prepared to leave, Dr. Kenji connected to Thal one last time through the neural bridge. He wanted to say goodbye, but Thal surprised him with a different concept. We don't have a word for goodbye. When parts of me separate, they carry memory of connection. They know they are still part of the whole, even across distance. So I don't say goodbye to you. I say this. You carry part of me now in your memories, in your understanding, and I carry part of you. We are not separate. We are connected across the void, two different forms of consciousness that have touched and changed each other. That connection never ends. The journey back to Earth took 20 years. During that time, Dr. Kenji and his team processed everything they had experienced. They wrote papers, prepared presentations, debated the implications. But more than that, they were changed. Having touched a consciousness so radically different from their own, they could never see humanity the same way. We were no longer the pinnacle of intelligence, the standard by which all other minds should be measured. We were one variation among infinite possibilities. When they returned to Earth, the Thalassia expedition became a turning point in human history. The biological archive was placed in a secure facility, studied carefully, its secrets slowly revealed. Scientists discovered new principles of biology, consciousness, and evolution. Philosophers grappled with what it meant that intelligence could take such different forms. Religious thinkers debated whether a planet-wide consciousness had a soul, and if so, what that meant for the concept of individuality. But perhaps the most profound impact was psychological. Humanity had met another mind, truly met it, and discovered that consciousness was far more diverse, far more strange, and far more wonderful than we'd ever imagined. We learned that being alive and aware wasn't one thing, it was infinite things. And somewhere out there, drifting through the darkness between stars, was an ocean that thought, an ocean that dreamed, an ocean that had been waiting billions of years to discover it wasn't alone. And now it wasn't. Thanks for joining us on Quantum Quest. If this story changed how you think about consciousness, life, or what it means to be an individual versus a collective, leave a comment below. Would you connect to Thal if you had the chance? What do you think it would feel like to be part of a planet-wide mind? Hit that subscribe button for more journeys into the impossible made real by cutting-edge science. Until next time, keep questioning. And remember, consciousness is always stranger than we can imagine.